Glen Shumate is the Executive Vice President for Construction Employers Association and the Executive Director of ACE Pathway Mentor Program, an after-school program designed to attract high school students into pursuing careers in the architecture, construction, and engineering industries. Glen explores his diverse career background and how he has come to understand STEM is everywhere.
Sure, my name is Glen, last name Shumate, Shumate. I have a couple of hats that I wear. One is primary function is I'm Executive Vice President for Construction Employers Association. I'm also the Executive Director of ACE Mentor Program, which is Architecture, Construction, Engineering, Career Pathway Program.
And so could you tell me a little bit about your journey and how you came to wear those hats?
Sure. Sandusky, Ohio native. I worked at Cedar Point as a rite of passage for anybody from Sandusky. Have to work there before you get out of town. I went to the University of Toledo, was a marketing logistics major, which is 60 miles west of Sandusky. Finished school and moved 60 miles east of Sandusky to a community called Cleveland. And I worked for the Cleveland Indians for a stint, about 10 years. I worked for Destination Cleveland for about 10 years. I ran a community newspaper for 2 years, and I've been involved kind of in the construction development industry for the last 12.
How on earth did you go from all of that to being in the construction industry?
So, things do tie together, as you can appreciate. And so working at Cedar Point and then the Indians really were connected in an industry called tourism, right? Mm-hmm. And so that allowed me to take background experience perspective and transfer to the tourism industry. And Destination Cleveland, if you will, is essentially an association whose members are hotels, attractions, restaurants, museums. I now work for another association, which is Construction Employers Association, whose members are contractors and law firms and accounting firms and things of that nature, but all involved in construction. So essentially, the tie to the Convention Visitors Bureau, Destination Cleveland, and here at CEA is the association management perspective.
Okay. So your education is in
marketing. Logistics. Yes.
Tell me, if you can, do you see that as a STEM field, or do you see what you're doing now as a STEM field?
I see more of the work I do now as a STEM field, not so much the logistics, component or capacity. I mean, logistics is the movement of people, things, goods, and services, right? There are certainly some technical aspects associated with logistics, supply chain, and I worked for a trucking company. I've worked for UPS. I've worked in a couple of different capacities in kind of the logistics world, including, again, the supply chain part of it. But, what I 30 years ago look at this and say, I'm going to be in the STEM field? No. The prejudiced thought of an engineer is probably what STEM represented for me. When I describe or hear or discuss construction, generally speaking, that as a career area is like, I'm in construction, does not, move me either. But what I get a chance to do every day, majority of the days anyway, is moving and exciting for me. And that's essentially working with individuals, both adults and students, to expose them to career paths that are in STEM fields, that are construction related, that are engineering related, that are design related. And that in the rubric of construction, architecture, construction, engineering, is exciting to me because I'm assisting other people discover opportunities, careers, and or business experiences in those areas.
You know, it's interesting that you would describe logistics as not STEM, because I kind of do think of it as being STEM related, certainly, or STEM.
I agree with you today. I didn't necessarily think of it that 30 years ago is my point, right?
Yeah.
30 years ago, STEM was, again, an engineer, if STEM existed, right?
Right.
And it did, but at least in my world.
Not in the way that we think of it now.
Right.
So
I think, some of that is opening our minds up a little bit broader to what STEM is. And again, 30 years ago, I would have not suggested logistics as STEM, but very much so with enlightenment and understanding and awareness, I would say that it is STEM field.
So how would you describe STEM now? What does that, I mean, beyond the meaning of the acronym itself, what does STEM mean to you today?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's a career area that, utilizes more of the, I'm going to say reasoning and science, or reasoning and, data, versus, the soft skill science of, HR or community relations or public relations, right?
Right.
And not that those elements don't have a measurement or data component, because you certainly can measure communications,
right,
openings and effectiveness, and changes in behavior and attitude and all those things. But in a much more dedicated and direct way, I think I would classify STEM in a more defined, truly technical space than hard science and soft science.
It's been described, I've heard described fairly often, that STEM is sort of, it's a way of looking at the world, and it's a way of approaching problem solving. Has that been your experience as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, again, if we talked about logistics, right, it's the movement of things, people, goods and services, right, or supplying those items. If we think about it in the sense of design, engineering, and construction principles, right, it's a way of getting to the end result of delivery of a, in this case, a physical structure. And quite often, and I kind of take a shot at architects who like to design things. They may not like the thought of being in construction, but unless there is an intent to build, you're an artist.
Right, exactly. It's funny, in thinking about construction, it strikes me that there might be a perception that STEM in construction, you're either an architect or you're an engineer, and that's about it. But it strikes me that STEM is everywhere, even in construction.
The engineering components of construction, right? I mean, so when a lot of times think of construction, we think the physicality of, I'm a carpenter, I'm a laborer, right? You don't think about what it goes into the mechanical systems, the plumbing systems, the force of flow of water, PSI, pounds per square inch, or high voltage electrical, right? I mean, all those elements are really very much problem solving, technical related, aspects of construction. And then we add the element that we don't often talk about, which is the construction management part, right? And that's where you have professional engineers, PEs often, right? Who are trying to deal with or understand, even, Cleveland has 2 projects that are going on right now that are the first mass timber projects that are really essentially replacing steel beams using layers of wood that have been treated that can support thousands of pounds of weight for an 8-10 story structure, wood, right? And that there's certainly an engineering component associated with that, or whether or not soil ground can support the load that's being placed on it.
It's all fantastically complicated, and like you said, there's a lot more that goes into it than just laying brick building a thing, building a frame, right?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. And even from a building brick, carpentry, certainly the math elements associated with those, right? And what you want is as a consumer or as an owner, commercial buyer, you want the precision and the quality. You don't want me doing it and it's almost and it's about. And I've cut it 3 times to get it to, as opposed to one cut and it fits, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that aspect of construction, even for carpentry, brick masonry, suggests that the application of math skills for measurement and or how much concrete or how many bricks you're going to need to build how many stories or how many feet wide, right, and long, suggests that there's material timing. There's even math that's going to go into how many bricks can a mason produce in an 8-hour day?
Mm-hmm.
How much supply do you need on site, right? Or how many workers do you need to perform that work within a schedule?
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's sort of to your point. It's not just because you might not have the mechanical pencil in your pocket and a pocket protector. I mean, you're still using that same core set of skills, right?
Yes,
you're still using those basic math and reasoning skills to get through all that work. Yeah.
Yes.
So I wonder, could I take you back to, let's say, 12-year-old Glenn? What were you interested in then, and how did you begin to explore what you wanted to do after you left high school and went on to college?
Yeah. So my global statement for a long time, John, has been, we don't know what we know until we know it, right?
Right.
And so it's hard to know what you want to do until there's been some level of exposure. And maybe then there's some level of experience that comes associated with that exposure, that may lead you towards getting education to create more qualification to be in a given area. And so to me, it starts with being exposed to something, and or being excited or enlightened by something, right, that intrigues you enough that you want to go further once you've been exposed to it. And so probably the 12-year-old Glenn was maybe how things work, and sometimes being destructive of tearing things apart to get to how's this really work,
right?
Then maybe trying to make it work again after I've taken it apart. So those were certainly some elements, but there was also a family or father that was always tinkering with things around the house or with cars, and kind of the hands-on aspect of learning how to do things. And I would share a lot of that was probably done just out of more necessity than hobby, right? It was a means to, not having necessarily all the financial resources to go out and, hire a plumber.
You can't always call a guy to have something fixed.
Yeah. So I mean, eventually in life, we got to that point. You knew people who could provide that service, but and I would also tell you that even as I think about the home I grew up in, that's still in the family my sister lives in, essentially went through, I don't know, 7 renovations or expansions over the years, right? And so there were often people around over the years as I was growing up that, 3-5 years old when I first probably moved into the house, to a renovation when I was 12, another renovation when I was 16, another major renovation probably occurred when I was 25, right in the same house, that added and changed and updated, elements of the home.
Yeah, and so you had even that exposure very early on.
Sure, absolutely.
Right.
And didn't think about it then, but seeing handymen, carpenters, plumbers, right, doing things in the house and expanding the house, and obviously it starts with the parents having a vision or a thought about, we want to add space, or we want to update a space, or we want to add on to, and then them finding persons who could perform those services.
Right. Well, so how did that curiosity and tinkering and taking things apart, how did that translate into marketing logistics?
Yeah, it really, excuse me, was a opportunity, I think, for, when I first went to school thinking I wanted to be an accountant. And before I took my first accounting class, I had a chance to work at a tax preparation firm.
Mhm.
That 4-month experience said, man, I don't want to sit behind a desk all day and crunch numbers. Now, that's not stereotypically all what an architect does, but
Right.
that's what I could see at that point in time, right? Is I'm
Mhm.
just going to be chained to a desk, you know, inputting data and,
Right.
creating more, financial reports, if you will. And
Pushing paper.
that doesn't sound exciting to me. And so stayed in the College of Business and ended up taking a lot of economics courses, probably took about 7 or 8 economics courses while in college. And that kind of intrigued me. But again, didn't think that I'd want to be an economist per se.
Mhm.
But somewhere along the way, got exposed to logistics and transportation, and that connected enough with me as a career, kind of opportunity or an area of a career that, dealt with, again, both, the movement of people and of things.
Mhm.
And, along the way had experiences of, working, as I said, at UPS and at a trucking company and an air freight company. So 3 relevant experiences, so that exposure with the education comes back around, right?
Right. Right. So, thinking about our audience now, like I said, these interviews are going to be made available to K through 12 kids. What advice would you have for kids now that, especially I'm thinking, kids that are maybe 10, 11, 12 years old that are really starting to get into the meat of thinking about the things that they like and don't like and thinking about where they might be headed. What advice do you have for kids?
Sure. I'd say most things in life matter. You hope you'll find a place where you can apply some of the things you're going to learn in school. And you want to be open-minded enough to at least grasp the concepts. You don't need to necessarily know that you want to be an expert in it and spend the rest of your life doing something, but become proficient, efficient enough that it becomes a tool, if you will, that you put in your arsenal and your tool belt. It's a skill or a skill set that you will have some usefulness or practicality to your life somewhere in the next, 20, 30 years, right? And so the basics of math, and even if you don't want to become a mathematician or an engineer, I mean, how you use math just for consumer basics, everyday living, is an important scope of, math, even at that level. If you think you might want to, again, work with your hands as a craftsperson, tradesperson, again, math and learning math and measurement will become important, be it circumference or be it, measures, will all find their usefulness in your life. And, I think being open to maybe not knowing how all those things might apply, but taking them again as experiences, tools, background that you can use, that'll be useful to you later in life.
Yeah.
And I think, beyond that, then I think can kind of have a conversation I was having early this morning about the person about not being afraid to learn something, to grasp something new, to do something new. And be it that we all don't want to just eat hamburgers all our life because that's what we like, or McDonald's French fries, right? Is a very limited diet, but we have to expand our understanding, our awareness, our experiences in a way that will add more meaningfulness, to us. And so I think the other side of that, on another practical human way, is engaging with people, right? You should not be afraid to ask a question to engage with somebody that may be doing something just like, what are you doing and why?
Right.
And kids generally are pretty inquisitive or ask that, question that will pause an adult to think about what they're doing and then be able to explain it in a way that adds some meaning to someone that doesn't understand it, right? That hasn't been exposed to it. And hopefully we all come across people in our lives that can turn on light bulbs or create energy or magic by us just asking a question or us just observing or paying attention.
Right. So it still just goes back to that core curiosity that you were talking about.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
Curiosity about the world.
Yep.
Right.
And not being shy, bashful, ashamed. There's, again, we hear there's no wrong answers, no wrong questions, I should say, right? There's wrong answers maybe, but no wrong questions to ask. And so becoming exposed or learning new aspects of careers, life should be an important part of the middle stage of our life, right? That middle school to college, right, is all about whatever that is from 10 to 25. And really should be a lifelong learner, but in particular, right, grasping a wide swath of experiences and skills during those teenage years that could lead you in a direction, provide you with some experiences and exposures and or contacts that will be meaningful, could be meaningful for you.
That's great advice. Is there anything else that you'd like to add that I haven't asked you yet?
If we think about athletes, right, and many of us are intrigued by athletes and what they can do, but there's a science to what they do, right? And whoever we want to take, be it a baseball player, basketball player, football player, right? And so let's pick LeBron. He has God-given talents and skills, but he also probably perfects his craft by the extra work, the extra effort to get better, to study, to understand the game, to even look at percentages or odds of what his capabilities are or what's, now Steph Curry probably makes some death-defying, or maybe death-defying is not the right terminology, but just things that no one can imagine a shot he can make. But he's practiced it, right? And he has confidence and belief in it, right? And it's that same kind of attitude of, having belief in ourselves, trying different approaches to improve ourselves. And that's the lifelong part of our journey, right? And at some point you're gonna evolve and mature, right? You may be able to be faster or stronger, and those skill sets may go away, and you have to, transition your game to a new phase.
Right.
And I think that's an important, part of using the talents and gifts we have, the experiences and the opportunities, but then also being able to make adjustments along the way.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's there's that sort of scientific tie-in. Like you said, LeBron, Steph, they've got all of the God-given talent in the world, but I think they also have a very well-developed, almost, scientific understanding of what they're capable of and how they go about doing it.
Right, and how to improve about it, right?
It's not just talent. I mean, there's the work there, there's the evaluative part of it, and there's the critical thinking part of it and how they think of their games.
Sure. And so even in the construction space, right, be it design, engineering, or physical construction part, there's been evolutions over, centuries and decades, right, of things of improved means and methods. And somebody has to just, hey, this isn't just about how much weight and force can I put on my back,
right?
But are there some other aids and tools and other ways in which more can be done in a more effective and efficient, way? And,
right.
So I think that curiosity of looking at things differently and trying to create improvements is an important part. I think the other piece I'd say sometimes about construction that people don't necessarily see is that there are elements of design and even maintenance that really that incorporate 3 or 4D visualization, right? So what's that mean? It's not just a flat piece of paper that has blueprints and lines and drawings on it. You can create that in an electronic model that occupies less space, is certainly more shareable, more transferable,
Mhm.
And then you can look at it in ways that you could say, hey, let me look at this building that was being built, pick a institution or an organ or home and say, let me look at it, and let me just show all the wiring. Let me see all the pipes. Show me
Right.
where all the bathroom fixtures are. And
Right.
then what kind of fixtures are they? Is it a Westinghouse? Is it a, is it a Moen fixture? And is there a warranty tied to it, associated with it? And that matters if you're a large institution like the Cleveland Clinic or a hotel that has 500 rooms, right?
Mhm.
And in each room are light boxes. Well, what are those light boxes and what kind of light bulbs are there? Which is going to take us all the way back to supply chain. Do I have those light bulbs in my storage? If that piece of equipment fails, is there a warranty on it? Who's the manufacturer of it? How long is the warranty? All that's an electronic model,
Mhm.
right? That construction is using, which is called building information modeling, that allows you to, before you actually construct something, right, even look at, will there be barriers of where we intended to place things, that there are, that design element doesn't work. Are the ceilings too high, too low? Are the beams running through the middle of a door or a window? Can we modify that before we get into the field, where it's going to be a lot less timely, costly, because we're doing it up front
Mhm.
and making those decisions up front, not out in the field where you have to then stop, delay, and
Yeah.
and do things. And so, that visualization part of our industry is a critical part, and technology from that to the use of drones that can be used more effectively for safety or evaluation today, that didn't exist 10, 20 years ago, is only going to increase. And we need people who have that mindset, right? And the building information modeling is really similar operating process to game design that young people do all the time. And so imagine that you could take that interest in gaming and apply it to construction
Right.
and have a career.
Right. If you've ever seen a kid play Minecraft, it's not that hard to connect the dots.
Oh, absolutely, yes. Yes.
Like you can kind of see where it's headed already.
Uh-huh.
Sure. Yeah.
So that's another element of the importance of the use of technology or technically minded people to think about careers in maybe, areas they hadn't considered.